Hello and welcome again to another episode of Sacktown Talks. Jarrett Blining here with you today. Our special guest, Rodney Wilson. Rodney, how's it going? What's going on?
Great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, good to have you on. Long time no see, old friend. So for the listeners at home, kind of give us a little bit about your background. You were a former staffer. I know you've worked for some associations. So
I spent 15 years working in and around the state capitol. I got my start in the Assembly Sergeant's office back in the early 2000s. Worked my way up, from making coffee in committees, handing out amendments on the assembly floor when we had paper amendments on the assembly floor, for those of you who remember that, to working my way up through the ranks as to chief of staff inside the legislature, as a lead state lobbyist for the Credit Union League, which is a state association represents credit unions in California and Nevada. So
you started as a sergeant.
Yes.
I bet you got some good stories.
Got some good stories, some of the
those days.
Absolutely. It was a different time.
Right.
And I was just a young mere lad and a fly on the wall.
So I guess what year did you, kind of transition from a sergeant to a staffer then?
So 2008, Fabian Nunez was, nearing the end of his term as speaker, and I'd been the sergeant assigned to him for 3.5 years. And so, he said, "Hey, Rodney, you've been going to school. This time I'm working on finishing my bachelor's degree at Sacramento State." Mm-hmm. And he said, "You're capable of more than this. Would you like a job in my office to learn policy?" And I said, "Sure." I had nothing to lose. I was already there at the moment. So I took him up on his offer, and that was 2008.
Wow. And so kind of like, everyone, they get into some form of state employment, and it's like, the benefits, the retirement, sticking with it for as long as you can to, get that pension. I guess, did you ever just ponder just staying with the sergeants and one day becoming, head sergeant, lifer, assembly sergeant?
It wasn't something I had the luxury of time to think about. Mm-hmm. Just every 3.5, 4 years during my professional career, I've been plucked or tapped on the shoulder to do one thing or another differently, right? So, it was about 3.5, 4 years in the sergeant's department. Fabian tapped me to do that. Then I spent another 3.5, 4 years, working different speakers, Karen Bass, John Perez after that, and then some personal members' offices to learn how that operated. And then, again, tapped on the shoulder to go work outside the building. And so I really never had the luxury of time to say, I'm just going to be a career legislative employee and retire here.
Yeah, what a cool kind of experience to kind of go from being a sergeant, being tapped by the speaker to say, "Hey, come work in my staff." How cool was that working for, Speaker Nunez and then, the following speakers?
It was awesome. I mean, I hadn't got to know all of the staff during my time in the sergeant's office, but, they, immediately, brought me under their wing. I got to learn from the best and the brightest in this policy unit. People have been doing this for, nearly as long as if not longer than I'd been alive at that time.
Right.
So it was very fascinating, a very, very quick, nitty gritty education I got, but one that very few people have the opportunity to get.
Right. And so, I guess there's so much movement, especially in that time, because, you had 6-year members. Mm-hmm. So you had a lot of people coming in and out all the time.
Lots of special elections.
A lot of job shuffling, I imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's always looking for a new member or a new spot over in the building. Kind of what made you decide to kind of, leave the building the first time and go work for an association rather than kind of, play that member jockeying?
Pay. To cut to the chase, you're tapped out inside the legislature. They have they had archaic salary structures, right? And so leaving the building was a way to get a quick spike in your income. Otherwise, for that hypothetical legislative employee who stayed the course for 20, 30 years, it'd be a very slow trajectory in terms of salary increases.
Okay, it's kind of like, I guess, to go in depth with that for people listening. So if you just started in the Assembly or Senate when you're 22 years old as a staffer and just stayed the whole time, how would your kind of salary go up through that?
You might hit, $75K,
So it's just a slow
just over
increase.
Time, right? Yeah, it's very gradual.
Okay. And then so what is the significance of going out and then coming back in?
Well, going back and coming back in, you're not necessarily coming in for financial benefit, but you have you bring in, just like you bring in skills with you from inside the legislature to an association or the lobby in a contract firm, you also bring certain skills back into the building, right? So you look at things from a different perspective, having been a lobbyist. As a staffer, you understand, what motivations are, who some of the movers and shakers are in town,
Right.
And who are some of the folks you want to guard your members against.
So then I guess, you going out, you got the pay raise. What made you want to come back in and join the staff ranks again after kind of working with an association for a while?
Sure. So I had the opportunity to come back in the legislature and work for Tom Daly, who was very, some would call moderate,
Right.
Democrat, very smart man. And, I'd always had a liking for Tom, his politics and just in general, we got along. And so this was a great opportunity to come into the building as his chief of staff. And it was a role I very much enjoyed working with Tom.
So I guess what year did you become chief of staff?
So that was 2017.
2017. So like in 9 years, you went from just becoming a staffer to a chief of staff. Is that right?
That's right.
It's pretty quick rise there. And then kind of, once you finally became a chief of staff, what were some of the issues you dealt with that you didn't deal with as just kind of a normal staff person?
So as a chief of staff, especially for a smart man like Tom Daly, you have to be on top of everything. So you have to know every piece of legislation, down to the details, because Tom's smart. He will ask you questions, right? So you have to be well versed on a number of different issues. He chaired a committee. So as chief of staff to a member who chairs a committee, you're de facto staff to that committee. You know, just also having to understand, what their needs are as the committee staff, in terms of access to the member and in different direction that they need from that member.
Right.
So you're looking at things from a more global view as a chief of staff because you have both the capital office and the district offices you're responsible for.
So I guess how many people were you managing? Because you had to manage the district office, the capital office, and I guess committee staff, right, as well.
It's over a dozen folks you're managing at any given time.
Okay, wow. So
plus all of you guys I had to keep from at bay at the door of the office, right?
Yeah. So how did the scheduling process work?
Yeah. Wouldn't you like to know?
Yeah. Exactly. So now, I guess you're now out of the building. Kind of, what are you working on now that you kind of left the legislature and you started doing your own business? What are you up to lately?
Yeah, so I'm starting my second career. I've started my second career in real estate. So actually putting my business degree from Sac State to good use, right? And helping people, just like I did inside the legislature and outside the legislature, but just in a different role. It's a more intimate role, helping people purchase their first home, helping retirees buy their forever home, and help investors manage their properties. Also, in this role, I have the opportunity to work with businesses who want to develop their business here in California. So purchasing retail space or distribution space. So it all comes full circle.
Yeah, it's interesting. Everyone thinks, oh, you spend so much time here in this kind of little bubble, but what kind of things and skills did you learn here at the Capitol that you're using now in your real estate business?
Well, one thing, I've said it before, I'll say it again, the common denominator between, in the business world and in politics is people, Jared. So, if you, can sit down with somebody, look them in the eye, come to terms with a set of mutual goals, and work together to reach those goals. You have a partner for life, whether it is in business or in politics. So I've always had a great way with people. I think of myself as having a great deal of integrity, and folks who've worked with me in the past, I think would share that sentiment.
Yeah, it's like so daunting to think of changing what you're doing and starting all over again. I guess, how was it, starting your own business and kind of diving into it and just diving into a new career?
Sure, it's just like going from working for a member on one end of the political spectrum to working for a member on the whole other. It's like you just as staff you have to be malleable and kind of just roll up and, just figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was okay. This is it. I had some personal friends of mine who had been, begging me to join their real estate firm because they wanted a Spanish speaker there. And I said, no, I have a life in politics and I enjoy it here. And so I just revisited that conversation and, got some education under me. Whether you're in the legislature or in real estate, education is key, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to know the laws and the regulations, so you can, be a good advocate for your clients.
Right. And so I guess, did you join like an existing brokerage or?
Yeah, so I joined a small boutique brokerage based out of Fairfield. Then I moved to one over here in Sacramento, also mom and pop. I'm now with Lion Real Estate, which is a larger, more well-known firm in the Sacramento area community.
Right. So I guess, for us that don't know, like, we know you use a real estate agent when you buy a home or you sell a home, but I guess, how do you become a realtor, and like, I guess, how does it work, I guess, financially for somebody who just wants to come in and be a realtor? It's not like they hire you and say, okay, here's your salary, right? You got to kind of like work for your commissions and listings, right?
Yeah. So, just like with lobbyists, right? Realtors have a real negative connotation in the public's eyes, right? They see realtors as commission hawks, right? Where, in the real estate, it's very clear cut, who makes what, right? The seller of a piece of property is actually the one who pays the buyer's agent. So if you're looking to buy a home, Jared, you wouldn't pay me anything as your realtor. Right. It's the seller who takes care of the brokerage, the commission for both brokerages. But yeah, you have to kind of, you're looking at things from a long-term perspective. So I wasn't looking to be, in a position to retire overnight, starting my career in real estate, just like when I started, working in the sergeant's office in the legislature, I had no idea where I was gonna end up, and look at where I did. So same thing with real estate, you just, roll up your sleeves, you do the work, you're humble and you're gracious that you have the opportunity to earn a paycheck, no matter how small, and singles make doubles. So over time, I was confident that, I would, put together, if you could do one, you could do another. And if you've been there once, you could do it again. So, income's just one of those things. If you've made it once, you can make it again. And, it's whether or not you have, the natural abilities and the charm and hustle to get there.
Right. Last year and a half, the real estate market has just been on fire, just keeps going up and up. Kind of what are you seeing out there right now in the real estate market here in Sacramento?
I'm seeing absolute, just craziness to the nth degree, Jared. It's wild, just for your modest single family home in the area suburbs, people are paying $50,000 to $60,000 over list price, which is a lot of money in the context of things, right? My last listing had 37 offers. I listed it at $335. We closed at $387,000, so 10% above list price. And
wow.
And it wasn't one of the hottest areas in town either. So in some of the hottest areas in town, like Lamb Park, for example, we've seen clients, spend as much as $100,000 over list price. And even then, it's competitive.
Wow. And so where are these buyers coming from? There's kind of this talk about people from other parts of the state moving here because they can buy a little more. Is that what you're seeing, or is it more people just in Sacramento finally just buying a home?
So there's folks in Sacramento who are selling and cashing in on the equity they've earned and upgrading. But there's also a significant amount of folks who are now moving in from the Bay Area. And this is more so as a result of COVID and the pandemic. Folks aren't forced to work from home anymore. So having given the flexibility and the luxury of being able to work remotely for many employers, no longer folks are seeing a benefit to spending $3,000 to $5,000 a month on rent in the Bay Area when, they could spend $3,000 a month here and have a very, very comfortable home to live in.
So I guess, like, market-wise, like, what are some of the more popular markets here in Sacramento that kind of you're seeing the most action?
You name it, but some of the most popular, like, suburban markets are going to be your Folsom area homes, your Elk Grove, because of the school districts,
Right.
right? So folks want access to certain public schools. So in Elk Grove and the Folsom, even to a degree, the Roseville Rockland area has been in demand in that area as well.
Right. And so I guess, what kind of mainly are you doing right now? Are you working on the buyer side, the seller side, or is it just kind of mixed?
So, traditionally, they like to start new real estate agents in as a buyer's agent, and then you ultimately are groomed to become a listing agent. I think you've known me long enough to know that I'm anything but what somebody says I am. If I had, taken that school of thought, I'd probably still working in the assembly sergeant's office at this point. So I had a really good mix of business last year. Out of the 8.8 million that I sold in real estate volume, I had a healthy split between buyers and sellers. And this was without doing any marketing to my network, my sphere of influence.
Wow. That's amazing. $8 million. Wow.
8.8.
8.8. Was that your first full year of
That was my
selling?
first full-time year. Yeah. So the average, to put it in perspective, so Masters Club, which is like the metric as to what the top 10% of realtors in the Sacramento area produce, the level to get into Master Club is about 10 million.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sorry, 5 million. 5 million.
Okay, so what's the Masters Club?
So the Masters Club is like, think about it like, the top 10 producing lobbying
Right.
firms that come up in the morning report. To make it up into that top echelon, you have to sell at least $5 million in volume. So I almost doubled that at 8.8
Okay.
in my first year.
And so now you're in a new brokerage. Was that within Lion or you just
That
started
was
Lion this
that
year?
was at Amen Real Estate, which
Okay.
is a local independent brokerage here in town.
Okay, so now that you've jumped to a new broker, is that enabling you to kind of broaden your horizons, kind of blow that number out a little more?
So this brokerage is going to allow me to focus on my business, on Rodney as the realtor, as opposed to other avenues of business, right? Commercial, or whether it be company programs I was developing
Right.
as part of my my portfolio there.
And kind of what is like, you kind of noted like the lobbying firms, lobbyists, personalities, we see the realtor shows on TV. Is there any sort of dynamics amongst the realtors? Are there people you work with a lot, or are there just so many realtors out there that
100%, 100%. So
different?
just like there's a dozen different lobbying firms here in town that are all well respected,
Right.
but they have their different cultures. You have their different personalities, the different partners and their egos. Same thing with a real estate brokerage. There's just, it's a different makeup, different culture, different financial incentives for the agents as are for the lobbyists, right? It's the same thing. So you just have to figure out what works for you, and where you can best serve your clients. Because sometimes, the firm or the brokerage might be the one impediment from you being your best self for your clients. And at the end of the day, we're all here for our clients.
Right. And so kind of going back to that hot market we were just talking about where you're, listing homes, how are you coming up with a listing price right now since they're all kind of getting blown out? Are you going into it knowing that, this is, let's go as high as we can go, or, does your client have a little more input, or
so in this
how are you pricing things?
In this market, I'm not going to prepare for a listing appointment, 3 weeks in advance, because the market's changing from week to week. Some would argue, every few days. So the prep time, the lead time for a listing presentation is a lot shorter, because now we're having, things are moving so quickly. For example, I'm having appraisers call me and say, Rodney, I have a house I'm appraising. It's right down the street from your listing. Can you give me any insight as to, what your house is in contract for? And, these are the dynamics.
Right.
So they're calling us for a change because they can't keep up with the numbers aren't being spit out fast enough into closings. So what I'm going to do though is, I think the key is in any client service, right, is understanding what the client's expectations are. Just like if, a client comes in and says, I'd like you to defeat this bill.
Right.
Okay, that's one thing. But if they say by a margin of 20 votes, well, then you're like, okay, what are you asking for?
Right.
That's ridiculous, right? So same thing, I'm asking my clients, okay, you want to sell your home, what are your goals? Are you just cashing out and moving to Texas? Are you, looking to upgrade? Or am I going to help you in the purchase of that upgrade? I want to understand what the motivation is for selling, so I could better understand, what their goals might be for those proceeds.
Right. Prop 19 passed over November. I'm sure it's being implemented now. Kind of, are you starting to see some of these kind of baby boomers or older generation folks kind of selling their home and looking to kind of retire elsewhere now?
There's been a demand even but prior to the passage of Prop 19, and I got the question all the time. Folks want to sell and they want to retire in a cooler or warmer place,
Right.
depending on their needs, but they're afraid to do so because they have this property tax benefit that they've earned over time, right? And they're afraid to lose that.
Right.
Many of them are on fixed incomes, if not retirees that just they watch every dime, right? They're from that generation. So I think now Prop 19's afforded them the ability to be portable, to take that tax benefit they've earned and not lose it all, as they near the end of their life.
Right. I guess as a realtor, is there anything you need to do if there are some folks with one of these Prop 19 kind of tax benefits when they buy a home? Is there any sort of special paperwork or anything you need to fill out to make sure they keep that property tax?
Not on the
threshold?
purchase. Not on the purchase. On the sale, they'll want to work with their accountant, and if they're working with a 1031 exchange consultant that helps manage my clients through that process. You just, I think with everything, like I said, you want to educate yourself on the various programs that are available to your clients, so you can best serve them.
One thing I just recently learned of is I guess they have historical homes. Do you know about this? Where if you buy a certain historical home, you get a certain property tax benefit. Is that right?
I haven't heard of the tax benefit, but I have heard you're severely restricted into what updates and maintenance you could do to that house, right? You have to make sure it's all up to local government standards and using a certain type of material that's reflective of the period of when it's built.
Right. I guess that's funny. Kind of like looking at homes in like Land Park, you always have the unzoned or unpermitted addition. Kind of what are some of the challenges when you're buying, you're dealing with a home and it is unpermitted, but it has that extra square footage. Are you allowed to price that in or not? How does that work?
Buyer beware, right? So you just disclose as a seller. I advise my sellers, okay, just tell them what you know about this addition. If this was done under your watch, okay, what do you know? If you don't know, then just say it was done prior to when you assumed the property. When you're selling it, things are moving so quickly right now. It could have, as long as there's either a cash buyer who won't have to go through the inspections to qualify that as a particular livable area, or there's no major health and safety issues, most lenders will give you a loan. And that's really what you're looking for when you're looking to buy a house, right? Is will the lender give me money to buy this house?
Right.
But do you want to sacrifice a garage for an extra living room? Like one of my clients recently purchased a home that had no garage because they had made it into second living room, but that's where they preferred their square footage, right? So to each their own. It's really up to the needs of each family.
Yeah. Kind of what are you saying, like, dealing with your buyers? What are they mainly looking for, kind of amenities, and kind of what's popular right now?
A home. So
any home.
Any home, right? It's when you're getting 15, 37, I've heard up to 46 offers on a particular house. There's just clearly way too many buyers for each home that is available for sale.
Right.
And that's just it's very sad for a lot of home buyers, especially a lot of first-time home buyers who are coming in with just the minimum 3.5% down that FHA loans afford them the ability to do. And these are hardworking teachers, firefighters that can't access a home, and they're perpetually having to rent, and because the market's so tough. So there is some disparities in who's able to buy and who's not, and ultimately cash is king right now. So whether it's by making a all cash purchase or by making a purchase with a significant cash down payment.
Right. You know, kind of the last time, you know, we all kind of grew up in this real estate bubble in 2007 through 8, and it popped, and we're just all have the scars. And, you know, a lot of people are talking like, yo, is this the second coming of the real estate bubble? Kind of what are some of the things you're seeing out there to, I guess, ease people's concerns that this isn't just the next bubble that we're going to deal with?
Sure. So I do a lot of my work on the phone, talking to prospective buyers who are on the internet looking at homes. And right after the pandemic hit, so, you know, St. Patrick's Day, the world shut down.
Right.
It was crickets for about 2.5, 3 weeks. You know, I think, you know, everybody was kind of just taking a moment, taking a big, long, hard pause and saying, all right, what's going on here? Like not making any major financial decisions.
Because it was going to be over, right?
It was going to be over. The world was going to be over, right? And then fast forward about, you know, the beginning of April of 2020, there was this, you know, folks coming around saying, all right, and they're calling me, they're like, Rodney, where's your rock bottom foreclosure prices from 2009? And I'm like, they're not here. Mm-hmm. You know, and I don't think they will be here, you know, because this is a much significant difference between the layout of 2008, 2009 to where we were in 2020, and now we are in 2021. And that's the glut of homes that was available on the market back then, number one.
Right.
So you had huge amounts of inventory. 2, you had a lot of folks back then were in subprime loans that, you know, many folks were in loans that they should never had any business getting.
Right.
And, you know, that's, you know, how they got there. That's a podcast for another day. But the point is, a lot of folks defaulted. Mm-hmm. And the people who are in loans today aren't in that same, you know, precarious loan situation. They have fixed rates. They knew the terms when they went in. Their payment is what their payment is. The Sacramento area is kind of insulated by the, you know, kind of the state workforce, right?
Right.
So even though, you know, the vast majority of our state employees might take a 10% haircut through furloughs or whatnot, there's a very slim chance that folks are going to be, quote unquote, losing their homes, right? Unless they're making very, very poor financial decisions. Mm-hmm. So there's just nowhere for you instantly to get, you know, a significant amount of inventory overnight that's going to drive down prices. Yeah. So, you know, the simple thing we try to ignore in high school and college economics, right? Supply increases, price goes down. If supply decreases, prices go up. And so now we're just experiencing a situation where there's just not enough supply. Builders need to build more. We need to get more creative in how we allow building to resume if we want some of these prices to stay affordable.
Right. I remember, you know, you used to have big housing tracts being built in Elk Grove, mm-hmm. Folsom, Roseville, Rockland. I guess, you know, are those new home communities out there, or is it, you know, mostly, I guess for lack of a better term, used homes?
There are some new homes, but because the demand's so high, they're playing by a different set of rules right now. So a lot of them are making the process as competitive, if not more competitive than buying a resale home. And it's unfortunate, right? Because, you know, for a lot of my clients and for just consumers in general, new home builders were a great option, right? You pay a deposit for the lot. Let's say it's, you know, $5,000. Right. You know, as long as you qualify for the loan on that particular home purchase, whether it be $450,000, $500,000, whatever it might be, that home is yours. Now it's gone into some kind of Wizard of Oz, you know, situation where you're supposed to write down your highest and best offer price, slip this piece of paper, and then hope and pray that they select your you know, faux offer out of the stack of 50 they're going to get that weekend for 2 houses that they're releasing.
Right. That's nuts.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, the other big thing that's going on is, you know, the rental housing market. A lot of renters out there, you know, a lot of people maybe not paying their rent, maybe not paying their mortgages. You know, there was a mortgage forbearance going on. There was a rent forbearance here in California that's going to expire, I believe, at the end of June or beginning of June. Are you seeing any kind of fallout residuals from those kind of rent forbearances, you know, with landlords not being able to kind of keep up, or, you know, wanting to sell their homes rather than deal with renters?
So investors have been more reluctant to look at certain types of rentals because of, you know, these programs, right? A lot of landlords who were hit in the pocketbook early in the pandemic are going to be, and I've noticed they're more stringent in terms of their rental policies and who they're renting to, requiring larger deposits or deeper background checks to make sure that their next round of tenants might not fall into that situation. You see it in lending too. In mortgage lending, there'd normally be like at least one verification of employment throughout the underwriting process of the loan. Now you're seeing the verification of employment like up until the day they fund the loan, because they want to make sure that the home buyer is still employed
Right.
day of until they actually hand them the keys to the house.
That's getting ever more.
So everybody's just protecting their interests, right?
So that's interesting. So I guess, for people who are kind of on the sidelines right now thinking, oh, another year the market might go down or things might cool off, kind of what's your advice to kind of, I guess, people on the sidelines looking at the market wondering whether to get in or not? Is now a good time, or, you think they should wait?
Now is the best time. I think if you qualify for finance, if you're a renter, you qualify for financing for a home purchase today, there's absolutely no reason why you should wait. Not take advantage of the tax benefit of having a mortgage interest deduction, or just perpetually losing your money to a landlord every day.
Right.
Prices, I don't foresee them coming down. This 2021's actually turned out to be more aggressive in terms of a real estate market than 2020 was. Folks are doing goofy things out there in order to get into homes, and they're paying through the nose. So
right.
I was just looking at a home that's coming on the market. I sold a home on that same street February of 2020, and it was listed at $399. We closed at $420. Right now they're listing at $480. Similar stats of the home. That's almost $100,000 increase in the course of just over a year. So if you're that consumer, who back then said, "Oh, I'm gonna wait till this pandemic's over," guess how they're feeling about right now. So I wouldn't want to be the consumer who wanted to forego on a purchase this year because they think it's going to be better next year.
Right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and kind of talking the real estate market with us. Interesting stuff. Love to catch up later in the year to see how things are going. And I guess if our listeners want to check you out, what's your social media? And, if they want to buy or sell a home, how can they find you?
Yeah, so my website's rodneydwilson.com. So they'll be able to find me there, all my contact information, all my links to my socials there. So it's www.rodneydwilson.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Rodney. And, I hope you break your record again this year. Sounds like you're well on your way.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks.
Some are called dreamers.